immigrants. He has promised to use his job as the chief law enforcement officer of Los Angeles to protect illegal immigrants, some of whom are cartel members, many of whom were brought here by cartel members. So be honest with me. What about just for 3 months, we let the Army handle it? Roll the troops. Grab them and toss them over the border. Be honest with me. Would your flesh like that? We have to have our border back, or we're not a country. We have to have deportations, or we don't have a country any longer. They have been overthrowing our electoral college. That can't be allowed to continue. We must do these things. But how about not doing it with the sign that says Trump is your daddy? If you want to hamper President Trump's job and hamper any chance of anybody having their mind changed, observing Trump and going, you know what, this is actually better. Having efficient government is actually better. Having an economy that works for people is actually better. Forcing pharmaceutical companies to actually test the safety of so-called vaccines is actually better. It's going to be a lot harder when people are wagging signs in liberal areas that say Trump is your daddy. Question, is he yours? Is he your savior? I'm very excited to see President Trump announce the details to how he is going to ban the chemical and surgical mutilation of kids. He announced the details in a video. It's a 20-step plan. It's a thing of beauty. If I were a one-issue voter, and I'm not, that would have been the issue on which I voted. Are you going to continue with a massive biblical scope lie that God did not create male and female in his image, that God was confused and put people in the wrong bodies? Are you going to continue with the fully totalitarian, forcing people to speak a lie, that man is a woman? Are you going to continue to allow predatory males to get into the locker rooms and showers of girls and women? Are you going to allow this to continue? President Trump has said no. On that one issue alone, I could look at that and say, my hand is forced. I have to vote for this guy. Do you want him to have unchecked powers? John Thune is going to be the Senate Majority Leader. And they had to do this vote in secret because the Senate doesn't think you matter. They don't want you involved in how they pick their leadership. The Senate's a private club, but you ain't invited, baby. You're no senator. What are you, some kind of citizen? So John Thune won the vote. John Thune, who is the corporate Republican, really, really popular with the Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C. and the CEO Roundtable, both of whom love them some illegal immigration because it lowers labor costs. They like being able to do backroom deals because they can protect their constituents' businesses. John Thune from Daniel Horowitz's website, Conservative Review, has a F rating for liberty. I believe it's 51% compared to John Cornyn's 54%. Question: what if we had Rick Scott instead, which we won't have? Would he be capable and willing to speak back to President Trump and to remember that the Senate is a co-equal branch of government? To say to the president, you know, sir, on this occasion, I have to disagree. I can't back this piece of legislation. We can count on John Thune doing everything he possibly can to keep the money flowing to Ukraine, to keep the border open, to keep Washington, D.C. as a separate country ruling us, not governing us. We can count on all of that. Backroom deals, shiny shoe republicanism. So on that hand, I am deeply not disappointed. I knew what Mitch McConnell was going to do. But my question is this: do you want the House and Senate to be a co-equal branch? Truly in your heart. Do you want checks and balances? I think they're important. for President Trump. Unchecked power is so seductive. For many people, it's as seductive as the forbidden fruit. Sex outside marriage, a bribe. For some people, it can seduce them into doing things they never would have done, the thrill of conquer. So where's your heart at? Yesterday, I spoke about this circumstance where a family member of mine who grew up near me, a woman who is terrified by President Trump, and he's being elected, and I talked about this, and I happened to mention that in defense of her, I used violence against a guy, and I don't feel proud of that in the least. I was a young man. That guy deserved it. I believe that was totally righteous, given that my family member called for help and given that he was assaulting her. So I don't think it was the wrong thing to do, but I'm not here to brag about it. But I'll tell you, I know what unchecked rage is like. I know what it does to me. Have you ever been there? I have. I'll tell you about this in a second because I want to ask you, do you want President Trump to have unchecked powers? Be honest. Is unchecked powers in people, is that godly? What should be the check on power? There's this phrase, a great therapist of mine, who's now a friend of mine, that Samantha gave me. Others can, you can't. Others can choose to have a human leader. This is the person who will save us. Others can do that, you can't. Because that person is just as flawed as you. I view presidents as our employees. I found myself thinking of President Trump as my leader. That's a first for me. I don't like that. His job is to lead the executive branch for us. But he's our employee. Right? I think, right? So here's why I asked this question, is you want to talk about a guy who has a reason to have some rage. There's a guy who has some reason for this. He just spent time in prison because he refused to respond to an illegitimate subpoena from an illegitimate body. And when he chose to not respond to that illegitimate subpoena, unlike Democrats who didn't respond to subpoenas that came from legitimate bodies, a subpoena from the Congress to disgraced DHS boss man Alejandro Mayorkas, that's a legitimate subpoena. He still hasn't responded. A subpoena from the illegitimate J6 committee is just that. It's an illegitimate subpoena. Steve Bannon wouldn't respond to that. So unlike Hunter Biden and anyone else, he went to prison. So I have a question. Steve Bannon seems filled with rage. Is this righteous?
You stole the 2020 election. You've mocked and ridiculed and put people in prison and broken people's lives because you said this thing was stolen. This entire phony thing is getting swept out. Biden's getting swept out. Kamala Harris is getting swept out. MSNBC is getting swept out. The Justice Department's getting swept out. The FBI is getting swept out. You people suck, okay? And now you're going to pay the price for trying to destroy this country. And I'm going to tell you, we're going to get to the bottom of where are the 600,000 votes. You manufactured them to steal this election for President Trump in 2020. And think where this country would be if we hadn't gone through the last 4 years of your madness, okay? You don't deserve any respect, you don't deserve any empathy, and you don't deserve any pity. And if anybody gives it to you, it's Donald J. Trump, because he's got a big heart and he's a good man. A good man that you're still going to try to put in prison on the 26th of this month. This is how much you people suck. Okay? You've just tried to destroy his business thing, and he came back. He came back in the greatest show of political courage, I think, in world history. Like Cincinnatus coming back from the plow. He's the American Cincinnatus. And what he has done is a profiling courage. We've had his back, but I got to tell you, he may be empathetic. He may have a kind heart. He may be a good man, but we're not, okay? And you deserve, as Natalie Winter says, not retribution, justice. But you deserve what we call rough Roman justice, and we're prepared to give it to you.
Rough Roman justice. Are you in? Steve Bannon has a very popular podcast. It is one of the most influential in the world. He's a great speaker. He's a man with incredible intelligence. He's accomplished so much as an investor and then a backer of films. He's a guy I'd love to meet one day. I believe he is truly pursuing knowing the Lord. I really do. And I can understand being filled with a sense of rage, like Jesus was. Oh, wait. But he wasn't. Was he? Do you want President Trump to have unchecked powers for rough Roman justice? It's tempting. I want justice on this earth because I know we'll get it in heaven. But I know what I'm like when I'm in a state of rage. Have you ever been in a state of rage? When my daughter was 2 years old, we were in a tiny little pocket park just up from her home. It was our favorite little place. I used to go there and bury her in the sand and chase her and watch her run up and down the slides, show me how she could hang. We had so many great times there. And one day we were playing there, and the little boy showed up with his dad. And the little boy had a couple of balls, so they kicked him around and they played, and she picked up the ball and ran from him. And I was talking to this little boy's father, who seemed to be a little ill-balanced, a little bit askew. So I was keeping my eye on him. And it was time for them to leave. So that father kind of grabbed his son, gathered up the ball, then the other ball, and was walking away. And then that little boy threw my daughter one of the balls. When we come back, I'll tell you what happened, and I'll ask you to make a decision. Do you want President Trump to have unchecked powers? We'll do that and get to the Tower of Babbling on Todd Herman. This is A Disciple's View.
Against President Trump. Next week, the Senate is holding a secret ballot election to determine their new leader, and the two frontrunners are rhinos. Thankfully, one candidate, Senator Rick Scott of Florida, is a solid conservative. He'll back President Trump. It's imperative that you contact your senator today and urge them to vote for Rick Scott. Visit afa.net for all the details. Time is of the essence, so please do it today. afa.net. AFA Action takes attacks on the family seriously. The enemies of the family constantly employ new tactics to try to sneak past our radar. They know if we stand together, their evil plans will fail. Your gift to AFA Action allows us to stay vigilant against their onslaught. And if you give this month, you'll receive access to the Cultural Institute video, When Your Faith is Illegal, by Frank Harbor, on AFA Stream as our thanks. You can make your gift today at afaaction.net.
This June marks 2 years since the overturn of Roe v. Wade. But did you know that the number of abortions actually increased the following year? Preborn continues to stand strong for women in crisis. Preborn is a ministry of compassion that showers women and babies with God's love, providing free ultrasounds to mothers to introduce them to the precious life growing inside them. When a mother meets her baby on ultrasound and hears their heartbeat, she's twice as likely to choose life.
I'm going to keep my baby, and I'm going to be a great mom.
$28 sponsors one ultrasound, and $140 helps to rescue 5 babies. Your generous tax-deductible donation will also help to provide women who choose life with assistance for up to 2 years. So please, give your best gift. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or visit preborn.com/AFR.
So right now may be the perfect time for you to rethink how you pay for health care. And here's why. This time of year is decision time for a lot of people, but it's also when you can join MediShare and save even more than usual. For many families, joining MediShare means saving about $500 a month, which is a game changer for a lot of people, obviously. But what's more, MediShare members like it a lot. Their satisfaction rate is 98%. Imagine that. And MediShare is a proven thing, too, for over 30 years. It's a Christian community of hundreds of thousands of people now. And here's the thing. If you join before November 15th and you mention the promo code SHARE, they'll waive your application fee, so you save even more right off the bat. I'll give you the number here in a second, but just call and you'll get a price within 2 minutes. And again, the deadline is November 15th, so call now. You'll save even more. Here's the number, 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE, 833-44-BIBLE.
Welcome back to Disciples View. I'm Todd Herman. Been asking you a question. People who are really excited that President Trump is in office. I'm really excited about many things he intends to do, the promises he's made, many that he's keeping, and I am praying and praying and praying that the president is praying and praying and praying. And I deeply hope that each morning in the White House begins with an on-their-knees prayer to the Lord and asking that the Holy Spirit guide their decision, that God's wisdom work through them rather than their own, that God help them seek justice and not revenge and not retribution, because there's a lot of people who deserve prison. Tony Fauci deserves to be in prison for the rest of his life. And I was about to share with you that I know what it's like to I know what I'm like when I'm acting in rage. I'll pay that story off in just a second. I was talking about something that happened with my little girl. Just a second here. The DOJ has tripled down trying to put in prison a doctor named Ethan Hain from Texas. Ethan Hain was a whistleblower. He pointed out that Texas had made illegal the chemical and surgical mutilation of children. He learned that his hospital was still doing it. So he blew the whistle. And the FBI showed up at his house to put him in prison because he supposedly violated patient privacy, which he didn't. They're liars. All of them involved in this case are lying. In fact, the Department of Justice has now admitted their indictment they gave to the first grand jury included false information, but they said, oh, I'm waiting for that. They still want him in prison. Every person involved in that case should themselves be put in prison. Ethan Hain did not violate privacy. He didn't disclose patient names to Christopher Rufo, who broke that story. Feeling rage? Wanting President Trump to have unchecked powers? Everybody involved at the highest level of this lie of transgenderism that has mutilated children, in my judgment, pushing it, deserve prison. Through a process. A legal, dispassionate one guided through God's wisdom, not ours. Justice, right? Do you want President Trump to have unchecked powers? There's a new peer-reviewed study calling for an immediate stop to all global stop to the use of the COVID shots. Why? Oh, just this little fact. people who got the COVID shots are 112,000% more likely to have brain clots, cerebral thromboembolisms. I ain't no doctor, I'm just reading the report to you. More likely to occur after getting those shots. When comparing these COVID shots to all other actual vaccines, if they are vaccines, the likelihood is 20,700% higher. Here's a for instance. After the COVID injections, 5,137 cases were reported of cerebral thromboembolisms in just 3 years. 5,137. In influenza vaccines, in the past 34 years, there have been reported 52 cases, which is bad enough given the fact that the influenza vaccines don't work for the most part. All of this was predicted. All of it. Anybody who had any understanding of what nanolipid particles do to the human body knew that this would go throughout the body. So yeah, Tony Fauci should be in prison for the rest of his life. But Steve Bannon called for rough Roman justice. Roman justice. Man, that brings to mind an image I don't think I like. Roman justice. What image comes to mind? I know what it's like when I'm in a state of rage. A few years ago, well, a long time ago actually, about 18 years ago, I was in that little pocket park outside of Seattle. We were blessed to live near this. It was one of my favorite places with my daughter. Anytime she goes back to Seattle, if I'm with her, she goes, let's go see our little park. Let's go see our secret beach. Let's drive by your old house. You know the drill with kids. And in her case, young adult, when she took her boyfriend over there, they went and saw that secret park, the park at park. And he took pictures and sent them to me and said, I tried to bury her in the sand. Both of us are too big. He's a sweet kid who gave his life to Christ. She was 2. She'd been playing with a little boy. I noticed that his father was unbalanced, so I was kind of keeping my eye on him. He was twitchy and not as a cop would say, he wasn't right. And so he was walking away with his little boy. Little boy had 2 balls. He tossed one to my little girl. I was about 20 feet away, and my little girl picked up the ball and started to run with it, giggling, thinking it was still the game, ran past the father who punched her in the top of the head and dropped her. I don't remember much. I remember about 3 men pulling me off of him. I remember a lady across the street screaming out of her bedroom window, "I've called the police." I remember looking at my hands and saying, "How did all that blood get there?" I remember looking at my little girl who was crying and saying, I'm okay, let me go to my daughter. I remember the police arriving. I remember saying to one of the police officers, he hit my little girl. I remember the police officers separated us and got our separate stories. I remember a police officer came and said, he doesn't want to press charges. He admits what he did. Do you want to press charges against him? I said, I want to do what's ever necessary that he never comes in within 100 feet of my daughter again, or a mile. Whatever I need to do. If that means pressing charges, fine, I'll go to court. He can press them. Had those men not been there, I have no idea how that would have ended. No idea at all. Do you want President Trump to have unchecked powers? We were walking home. My hand's bloody with that man's blood. My daughter said, you hit that man. Yeah, I did. A lot. I did. You were very angry. I was, and I was scared. Because he hurt me. Yes, I won't let anyone hurt you. I think we're supposed to turn the other cheek. Did you hear that in Sunday school? Yes. Yeah, I think that refers to words often. We're certainly not supposed to go around hitting people. But I think it's okay to protect children. I hope God will understand. She said, I think so. Her tone changed when we got home. Her tone changed when we got home. She went running up the stairs and said, Mom, it was cool. Dad hit a guy. Came to learn the guy was visiting there. There's no real threat of him coming back to my daughter. But man, I hope President Trump isn't seduced with the opportunity to have unchecked power. I hope he's on his knees. Maybe right now. Praying that God's wisdom, it will be the check. Because he won a sweeping election victory. It's impressive. He has a mandate. A mandate that God is giving him to steward, not to abuse. And yet there's a bunch of people in power who absolutely deserve a jail cell. It's going to be a tough line to walk because he'll be accused of jailing his political opponents when they've tried to do it to him. It's going to be a tough line to walk. It's going to be something that God will need to decide through President Trump and his team. On this program, we thank the Lord for placing supposedly wise people on tall towers of shaking sand with their feature called the Tower of Babbling.
You know about the biblical truth of the Tower of Babel. A Disciples View presents.
And there's a lot of other, for example, the idea that we're, in terms of taxes, that they refuse to, for example, I was able to balance the budget and pass everything from the global warming bill anyway.
The Tower of Babbling.
What are we going to do without Joe Biden for that? We'll have to play his greatest hits. 3 sound bites in today's Tower Babbling, almost always 3 sound bites. This young woman is filled with giggles. She was the jury foreperson in one of the lawfare cases against President Trump, that one in Georgia.
Did you personally want to hear from the former president? I wanted to hear from the former president, but honestly, I kind of wanted to subpoena the former president because I got to swear everybody in. And so I thought it'd be really cool to get 60 seconds with President Trump of me looking at him and being like, do you solemnly swear? And me getting to swear him in. I kind of just thought that would be an awesome moment.
Seems like a solid choice to be a jury foreperson. I'm maybe not. Second soundbite in today's Tower Babbling. A CNN liberal, Jamala Simmons, a former Kamala Harris communication director, has an idea for figurehead Biden.
He could resign the presidency in the next 30 days, make Kamala Harris the president of the United States. Whoa. He would absolve her from being able to, from having to oversee the January 6th transition, right, of her own defeat. And it would make sure that it would dominate the news at a point where Democrats have to learn drama and transparency and doing things that the public want to see is the time. This is the moment for us to change the entire perspective of how Democrats
Okay, this is now...
The Democrats have to use drama. Learn to use it? Am I the only one who's tracking what appear to be about $5 million in illegal payments to people like Oprah Winfrey, who said for Kamala Harris to get on her show as an infomercial? And Oprah apparently had said, oh no, they didn't pay me. And apparently what she meant is, no, they didn't pay me, they paid Harpo, my company. I don't handle the money. They need to learn drama. Transparency, yes, but that's transparent. Last soundbite in today's Tower of Babbling. A few weeks ago, Democrat strategist Tim Miller said this about Mark Cuban.
Cuban is out there fighting this battle for younger men. The Elon Musk and this kind of bro podcast universe. You've seen the numbers. Trump is doing better among younger men of all races, and I think Cuban is out there as somebody that can be a voice to push back. It's like, hey, I'm not, I'm a guy's guy. I own a basketball team. I made money. I cuss, and I'm happy to just give you the real truth about this. Like,
That's what young men were seeking. Bros who made money and cuss. Man, I know when I think about my young friends, most of my friends are in the mid-30s who attend church with me and we pray together. I know when I talk to them, man, what kind of man do you want to be? I want to be a bro who makes money and cusses. How did they lose? Given leadership from people like Tim Miller. Wisdom, as it were. And that's a wrap for today's Tower Babbling.
That was the Tower of Babbling.
I don't have anything to share with all of you at this time, and I'll just leave it there.
On A Disciple's View.
Sometimes it's the simple things. Sometimes it is. And sometimes it's the really difficult things. And you have to seek the simple within. And on a personal note today, seeking the simple within. Made a decision that was horrible. It was difficult. It was hurtful. And in some ways, I believe it's probably cost me a friendship that meant the world to me and friendships around it that meant, well, joy. Been really hard. And as I think about that decision, and I think about the complications of it, think about God's voice, trying really hard to protect other people, trying really hard to hear God's voice, to protect other people, I was thinking about the simple. I've been asking, do you want President Trump to have unchecked powers? And maybe God was asking me, do you want me to have unchecked powers in you? Or are there parts of your life you'd still like to lock me out of? Sometimes it's the simple things. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Because we believe, we speak. Because He first loved us, we speak His Word. We walk in the path of Jesus Christ to make disciples of all nations. Until God gives us the permission to speak again together, may the peace of the Lord that surpasses all understanding rest upon you and your families. On behalf of Randy and AFR, I'm Todd Herman, and this has been A Disciple's View.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
90.5 KTXG, Greenville, Dallas.
Author of the book, A Minute for Caregivers, When Every Day Feels Like Monday.
I've been a caregiver for nearly 40 years, and I know how important it is to encourage a family caregiver. I also understand that caregivers don't have a lot of time, and each chapter of my book can be read in a minute. It's encouragement, support, and each chapter will point you to safety. Oh, by the way, they're all written in fluent caregiver.
A Minute for Caregivers is available at resources.afa.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Mr. Keith. Republicans have elected a new Senate leader.
Senator John Thune will be the first new GOP Senate leader since 2007, as he replaces current leader Mitch McConnell. Thune defeated Senators John Cornyn of Texas and Rick Scott of Florida. The South Dakota senator currently serves as Senate Minority Whip and the second highest ranking Republican. He's also served as chair of the Senate Commerce Committee. Thune will take over in January at the start of the next Congress, where he'll have a majority for the first time since Republicans lost the chamber in 2020. He'll be tasked with helping to pass President-elect Trump's agenda and confirming his judicial nominees. On Capitol Hill, Ryan Schmelz, Fox News.
President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump held a meeting in the Oval Office for the first time since the president-elect secured a second term in the White House. The president-elect says he's looking forward to the transition of power.
Politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that.
Manhattan judge overseeing President Donald Trump's trial agreed to grant a stay on all deadlines associated with the felony conviction proceedings against Trump in the final months before he takes office. A Trump attorney, Elena Haba, says this whole case was fabricated by New York Attorney General Letitia James and should never have happened.
So we all know, and I don't think I have to repeat this, if you look at the polls and what happened on November 5th, the American people know this was a sham case to start with. It was past the statute of limitations, shouldn't have been brought, actually wasn't brought by Cy Vance, wasn't brought originally by D.A. Bragg until he decided to run for office. The case should unequivocally be dismissed. We've said that. It should be dismissed. There's so many levels of reasons, one being the immunity decision that came out of the Supreme Court.
The House of Representatives holding a joint hearing about the possible existence of UFOs. Republican Congresswoman and Chairwoman of the Cybersecurity Subcommittee on Oversight, Nancy Mace, discussing the purpose of the hearing.
This hearing is intended to help Congress and the American people to learn the extent of the programs and activities our government has engaged in with respect to UAPs and what knowledge it has yielded. This includes, of course, any knowledge of extraterrestrial life or technology of non-human origin.
Expect to hear a lot more about Texas and school choice. Chris Woodward tells us why.
Texas has clinched a school choice majority in the House of Representatives, something Governor Greg Abbott was hoping for to enact his school choice plan next year. The Texas Senate gave its blessing in the last session, but it did not get through the House. Mandy Drogan of Texas Public Policy Foundation is thrilled.
I am looking forward to supporting the governor and lieutenant governor and the legislature in finally empowering parents and passing the nation's largest education savings account in Texas.
Critics of school choice say it will defund or harm the public school system, but Drogan says that could not be further from the truth.
In fact, just recently, the Texas Education Agency put out some clarifying information showing that we have never provided more funding for public education. We are fully funding Texas public schools. It's really important that we continue to support great teachers and our kids in the classrooms and make sure the money is being put in the classrooms. And at the same time, it's really important that we trust parents to make the very best decision for their kids. So this is a rising tide that's going to lift all boats across the great state of Texas. And it's exciting to see that finally the legislative body will be made up of supporters of empowering parents and finally get this across the finish line.
I'm Chris Woodward.
U.S. stocks are drifting near their records after the latest inflation update boosted hopes that more help for the economy will arrive next month from another cut to interest rates. The S&P 500 rose 0.3%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added 182 points. And the NASDAQ Composite was 0.1% higher. Stocks got support from easing yields in the bond market. More news online at afn.net and on the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty P.
Is God calling you to ministry? It's time to multiply your capacity for ministry with an affordable degree. The Bachelor of Arts in Christian Ministry at Wesley Biblical Seminary is the degree for you. When God called you to ministry, He called you to preparation. This degree is the education that you need to put all the pieces together for an amazing life of ministry. You will graduate with a confidence for ministry that is backed up by your competence in the scriptures, theology, and ministry. Come learn with a trusted seminary that will help you become a faithful leader. Learn more at wbs.edu.
Inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. Glad to have you with us today on the program. This is our live edition of the show. Walker Wildman here with you. You can subscribe to the podcast over at afr.net, afr.net. And we do have a guest this segment. We're going to jump to him here just shortly. But before I do that, I want to mention our Operation Christmas Child Project. Our Operation Christmas Child Project National Collection Week is the week ending November 25th. But between now and then, they are collecting the shoeboxes. So we're partnering with Operation Christmas Child. The official National Collection Week is November 18 through 25, but they're, of course, compiling the boxes now in order to collect them on the week of the 18th through the 25th. So National Collection Week is coming up here pretty soon in just a couple weeks. And if you want more information on our partnership with Samaritan's Purse, you can simply visit SamaritansPurse.org/OCC, SamaritansPurse.org/OCC. Bobby, do we have Mr. Jaregi with us? All right. Philip Jaregi is our senior counsel. Hey, Philip, you there?
Hey, little technical issues, but we're here.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I can see you now, and we got your audio loud and clear. Philip Jaregi is our senior counsel over at AFA Action, and he's been working on our judicial research project for the last 2 years. And now President Trump has been elected. He's president-elect, so we have a friendly administration incoming. So we brought Philip on just for a few minutes to talk about some of the latest ongoings. Well, Philip, tell us a little bit where we are in this process. We've been doing this research for 2 years, but now, you know, the rubber's starting to hit the road, and there's a lot of news breaking on these appointments.
Big time. And Walker, just in terms of big picture perspective, this is the first time in anyone listening's lifetime that we've had this opportunity, with conservatives having the White House, the House, the Senate, but then also the court. Keep in mind, we haven't had the court really until the last 2 years, and I would say we don't have the court in the sense of knowing they're always going to rule the way that we want, but they're no longer a captive tool of the left. So this is an incredible opportunity we have over the next 2 years to make massive progress. And Walker, I think it starts right now with getting good people who understand what it is to appoint constitutional judges into this administration in the key positions that we and our allies and your listeners will be working with. Because if you have the wrong gatekeepers that don't understand what it takes, then you're really, it's an uphill fight, right? But now's the time to get great people in there. And I think we're on our way, but we need to focus on that because that's going to be important in the 2 years to come.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll talk later in the show. I'll talk about nominations and who President Trump has nominated thus far for his cabinet and other positions. But Philip, let's talk about two offices, right? There's the Office of White House Counsel and there's the Office of Legal Policy at the DOJ. But first, let's talk about White House Counsel. President Trump made a pick yesterday evening on his White House Counsel position, but there's even other positions that we haven't been decided on to our knowledge in White House Counsel that play a big role in nominations.
Absolutely. So there's the White House Counsel, which is Bill McKinney, but then the top position under the White House Counsel, he has, as people might imagine, several deputies, about 3 or 4 deputies. And one of those deputy White House Counsels, they'll probably organize it so that you have a nominations unit. That's up to the president and the White House Counsel. But there should be a deputy over nominations. That's a key position, to have a good person in there, again, who understands, well, hopefully they're an ally, Walker, but as long as they understand what it takes to find a good constitutionalist judge and they're following that standard, then great, we can work with that and supply the evidence for different prospects. But that's a key position. But then in addition, they have attorneys and staff working with them at the White House Counsel's office. And then, as you mentioned, also over at the Department of Justice, there's an office called Office of Legal Policy. That's simply the office there that works on judicial nominations. And so key positions there, a chief or a principal deputy, associate attorney general, and then under that, other staffers, again, who'll be working on nominations.
Philip, I know you have another obligation, and so we'll only leave you on for another minute or two. But before I let you go, talk about the kind of people and the kind of philosophies that we desire be in these positions in order to get the best of the best nominations.
Absolutely. So, as you know, Walker, we're looking for people who understands what the constitutional standard for a judge is, and that's people who will never legislate from the bench, but will simply decide cases under the laws and not rewrite laws. But then in addition to that, so anybody can give a speech, right, and say, yay, I agree with that. But what we're looking for and what we've spent thousands of hours at AFA doing is researching the background of folks to see, is this something they came to in the last 6 months, or do they have a record of courage over the last 6 years, 16 years, 20 years that give us the greatest amount of confidence? Because that's what we're really looking for. I mean, we've missed it a lot in the past, and so we're trying to minimize the risk that we miss it again. And one of the ways you do that is by looking for people who have the strongest record, and a record of courage too, right? Because it's one thing to say it, it's something else to stand for it when it's difficult when you're a judge.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, Philip, we're going to keep tracking this. We're going to have you on over the next few months to talk about this as positions are filled and even lower court vacancies are beginning to be filled by the Trump administration incoming. So thanks so much, Philip.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Walker.
All right. Appreciate that. That's Philip Jaregi with EFA Action. He's our senior counsel over there. He's also president of Judicial Action Group, and he's working on all of our research on nominations for the federal judiciary. Jumping into some of these nominations, we have Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State pick for President Trump, President-elect Trump. The EPA director selection is Lee Zeldin. He's a congressman from New York. The UN ambassador is Elise Stefanik, also a congresswoman from New York. Homeland Security Secretary pick is Kristi Noem, governor of South Dakota. The ambassador to Israel selection is our good friend Mike Huckabee. Very good pick there in Governor Huckabee. I know him personally. The CIA director pick is John Ratcliffe, former congressman, and he was also director of national intelligence in the first Trump administration. Also, Pete Hegseth. This was a pick that came out last night. Pete Hegseth is a military veteran. I believe he received several awards, several Commander-in-Chief presidential awards, and served at least 2 tours overseas in combat. So, military veteran there in Pete Hegseth. Also, he graduated from 2 Ivy League schools, which is very impressive. Susie Wiles is the Chief of Staff selection. Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy is Stephen Miller. Border Czar, you got to love this. President Trump is completely trolling Kamala Harris. Border Czar is Tom Homan. Top-notch pick there in Tom Homan. National Security Advisor, Congressman Mike Waltz. Let's see, White House counsel, as Philip said, is Bill McKinney. And God, there's so many. Middle East envoy Stephen Witkoff. Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. That was announced last night. So a lot of good picks, honestly. I mean, I haven't seen any that are just utterly disappointing. All right, I haven't seen any selections to cabinet or government from President Trump that are just, at face value disappointing. All right, some could be, I have my opinion about all of them. In particular, Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, and I'm not throwing shade on Kristi Noem, but that caught me off guard. I didn't know that Kristi Noem had experience in the Department of Homeland Security or in law enforcement or in that arena. And look, it doesn't mean that you have to, because one of the problems with Washington is you keep picking the same people to run things, and they mess things up, and they don't know what they're doing, and they're bought and paid for by special interests. So there is something refreshing and something wise about picking people who haven't held these positions before, and in some regards haven't worked in these agencies before. But what's going to make this critically important is that President Trump, is that these leaders of these agencies and these cabinet positions have policy wonks below them that know the ins and outs, that know the rules of the game with these agencies. That's going to be critically important. Like, I'm just thinking about the Department of Defense with Pete Hegseth. I mean, I like Pete Hegseth, but he hasn't worked in the Pentagon. He is a military veteran, so he has extensive military experience, and he does know how the military works, which is a good thing. But he's going to have people beside him, and I'm not saying he won't, he will. He's going to have people beside him and below him that know how the Pentagon works, that know how the Defense Department works, know kind of the ins and the outs, right, of this massive agency, the largest in government, the Pentagon, largest agency budget-wise and personnel-wise in the federal government. So interesting developments. We're still tracking them, but we got to have good people all throughout the Trump administration. And look, this we'll talk more about this in the last segment, but anybody thinking that President Trump's going to smooth sail in there, Democrats are going to get on board with President Trump's agenda, the bureaucracy is going to be fully submissive to President Trump, there's going to be no resistance. Who are we kidding? All right, so let's don't get stuck in this glamour period of President Trump's victory and how great it is, and has the wind at his back. All right, those things are true, but folks, the special interest and the money that is at play in this second Trump administration, folks, is billions, trillions, technically trillions, but billions of money is at play. And there is a litany of special interest groups, major corporations, major military industrial complex contractors that are on the ground in D.C. They're heavily invested in D.C. They are heavily invested in lobbying practices. They are heavily invested in various lawmakers, including senators, and we'll talk about that some. But to think that President Trump and his team are just going to roll into Washington, D.C., and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are just going to start firing everybody left and right, and that this is going to be a big grand party is being completely ignorant and ignoring of the fact that this is a major fight for the future of our nation, and people's jobs and livelihoods are at stake. And that's not to draw sympathy per se, but I'm just letting you know that this fight is going to be everything but easy. All right, it's going to be anything but easy, and we don't need to be surprised when the resistance begins. And the resistance will begin. I've got clips of it now. The Democrats are regrouping. All right, I agree. The Democrats are in disarray. There's no doubt about that. But the reality is that the Democrats will not remain in disarray. That's a fact. The Democrats will regroup. They will come back with their own crafty strategies, and they will do anything and everything that they can to block President Trump's agenda. Now, I'm not saying they will succeed, but I'm just telling you the resistance will be there. The resistance is already there in Washington, D.C. So get ready. We have basically a 2-year window of opportunity with the trifecta of the House, the Senate, and the White House, and the Supreme Court, as Philip Jarigi mentioned. So 2 years is the window. Of course, 4 years in a dream scenario, but 2 years is the window of opportunity to fill the seats, pass the legislation, appoint the judges, enact the foreign policy, etc., etc. We'll be back in a few.
I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. What are gates? They are defensive tools used to keep stuff out, to keep an advancing force at bay. Too often, the enemy is successful in putting Christians on defense, when the facts are the Lord established his church as an aggressive, offensive, territory-taking body. The Lord never meant for us to sit on the sidelines of life or to cower in the corner as a result of the wickedness in our culture. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. The light of the world cannot be contained. The Lord is building